Welcome to another edition of the Bandwagon Podcast, and today I have a very special guest, somebody who I've worked quite closely, who's been on their own incredible journey and doing an amazing sort of job working in with communities and in particular with the Sikh faith. I'll introduce him right now. It's Jaz Rai. How you doing, Jaz?
Yeah, fine, Ricky. Thanks.
You all right? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. So Jaz, for those people in terms of some of the work that they might have seen you around, one of the things you're quite heavily involved in is with the Sikh Recovery Network. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Sikh Recovery came about we started in 2016, and it initially came about after the programs I was doing on the Sikh channel. Some people recognized me from Alcohol and Beyond, and we started getting phone calls. People were phoning the Sikh channel, and they'd pass on my number. And I think they were inspired by not only my journey, but some of the interviews that we did. So, but we needed to think of a name because Alcohol and Beyond was something the Sikh channel was doing. It was one of their programs. But some people were saying Jaz Rai, Alcohol and Beyond, but that didn't really wasn't right. So we just came up with the name Sikh Recovery Network, and I thought it kind of worked, and we was working with other agencies as well in the mainstream, service providers, police, local authorities. So it was really just forming a network of people that could support people in recovery.
Did you feel at the time that there was a gap in services that, what you were doing? So, I mean, we'll get to your own journey a little bit later on, but I just want to go kind of straight in there in terms of how easy was it operating in that space? If there was a space?
Well, you talked about the gap, then yeah, definitely was a gap. When I came into recovery, in 2009, but in 2009, when I went to my first AA meeting, I couldn't connect with it. There was just white people there, and no offense to any white people, but I just couldn't connect with that. But yeah, definitely, the Sikh Recovery Net came about because there was a gap in the existing services. And people of our community, not just our community, whether it's any other community, whether, South Asian community, they feel more comfortable, I believe, sharing amongst their own people.
So I could understand it in terms of the first generation or perhaps even the second generation where language issues were, more prominent in terms of trying to convey the Punjabi need or South Asian need or the Sikh need. How did you try and approach some of those meetings were and say look, this is culturally just not connecting? Is there something that we can do together, or is there some way of working and adapting it or tweaking it for different audiences?
I think that's the word I was, as you was speaking then. Obviously, the language barrier for a lot of people wasn't an obstacle. It was that cultural identification. That's what they needed. Some sort of identification culturally where they can share and express, if they're going to a wedding at the weekend, for some people who are non-Punjabis or non-Sikhs aren't going to understand how difficult it can be to go to a wedding if you're Punjabi and you have a drink problem and you're trying to come off it. I experienced that early on in recovery, in the fellowship of AA, and even service providers wouldn't encourage you to be around alcohol that early. I stopped drinking in January the 30th, and I had a wedding in mid-April. But for me, I'd not been to any family function for a year. So I wanted to go back to the, connect with family again. Mm. But it was also a very big fear for me as well. But going to those culturally empathic meetings, I could share that and people understood.
I remember speaking to quite a lot of ex-drinkers, so to speak, about how they got to a stage where they knew that they were getting invited to go to a party or a wedding to become the entertainment, because they knew that the guests or the person's friends know how they would behave once they've had a drink, and to get them to that state to become the entertainment. Did you ever feel that was right, or did you ever feel that you're in that kind of same position?
It's definitely not right. I don't think anyone's going to say that's right.
No, I'm not saying it's right. Right in what I'm saying.
That's right. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Some people know that they can, give them one too many and they're going to be the entertainment. They're the one they're going to take the mickey out of, and he's going to become the joke. I remember when I went to that wedding in April, it was in Birmingham, and it was my brother's sister-in-law's wedding, but there was a family from Derby that was there. And this one guy in particular knew my journey, knew I was an alcoholic, right? But 3 times he offered to get me a drink. And in the end, I had to say to him, if I need one, I know where the bar is, I'll get it myself. So there is people in our community, and the people that are listening to this will know that, that some people want to see you fall. They want to see you fall flat on your face again. And it's a shame, really. I don't find that with some other communities, but in our community, some people do want you to fall flat on your face, and they can say, well, look, there he is, he's drinking again.
And so, like, when you're talking, when you're doing your Sikh recovery and running your program or running your meetings, how do you kind of cater for that?
We allow people to share openly and honestly and freely. It's an environment where they're not going to be judged. They've got the opportunity to share in Punjabi, they can share in English, or they can share in both. But it's having the ability to be able to share and not feel judged, and people to understand that actually this does go. Everyone's like, when some people are sharing in a meeting, that people are nodding, thinking, yeah, I went through that, I did that. I was going to be the joker. So yeah, there's that identification and finding those similarities that people can identify with.
So I want to go a little bit back to the future at this point then, Jaz. So how did your journey into alcohol start?
My journey, I was 17. I was at college. I had my first drink at college, and at the time, I thought, even after that, for many years, I thought that was normal. 17. But since
that must have been a long time, Jaz. A long time.
No, it's not too long. Not that long. These
60s, 60s.
These greys are just there to,
I can't say enough about greys.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was. I think it was 1986, 1987. So 1980. So I'm 50. Be 51 next month. Right. Yeah, I didn't particularly enjoy it. I'll be, I went to the college called Wilmorton College, and there was a pub next door to it, the Navigation. It was a friend's birthday, an English friend of mine, Scott. It was his birthday, and I brought him a drink. I had a lager shandy myself, and like I said, I didn't particularly enjoy it. And after that, there was this a culture at college then, when the lads used to chip in and buy a bottle, right? So it's got into that culture, chipping in, buying a bottle. And I like the effect, what it did, letting you go over all the inhibitions, you could, there was the college parties, and it was just great. You could dance, you could chat to girls, you could, what I mean? You felt free, but actually it was just a mask and a disguise.
Yeah.
And this just carried on for years and years and years.
So that escapism, you found the tool that helped you kind of express yourself and forget about the inhibitions and hopefully then get a drink or meet a girl at the same time.
Maybe not meet a girl. Didn't meet with the girls. Get a drink, have a dance, and then go home pissed.
Yeah, well,
just straight up into my bedroom.
So I think that's kind of like culturally, that's fairly common kind of story in terms of what you're kind of sharing at this point. When did it start to get a little bit more problematic, or you started to recognize, hang on a second, I'm actually not like Scott. I don't know what happened to Scott, but I'll presume he's okay. And to get to that level where you think, hang on, I'm more of an outliner here rather than how everybody else is going.
I think I was 26 and my chacha's daughter got married. I was 26 and we had a off-license convenience store. And I think that's where our problems really started. Before that I was drinking. It was, social drink, if you like. But looking back, it was creeping up on me then as well. I was just drinking more and more every weekend, getting drunk and doing crazy things. But when we had the shop, it was my 96 was my chacha's daughter's wedding, and I'd had a skinful throughout the week. I was drinking in the shop at the weekend. But coming home, I went with her. Your brother was quite young, so I went with her when she got married on the wedding day. But coming back the following day, I had this strange feeling as I was in the car. And as soon as I came home to my chacha's house, I was going upstairs just to lie down, and I'd had a seizure. I only realized when I woke up that it was a seizure. And I think the alarm bells were ringing then. I went into hospital. They asked me how much I was drinking daily. It was half a bottle of vodka at the time. And they said, well, you're going to have to cut down. And they told me...
So you didn't recognize that there was issue, so how long were you caning a half a bottle of vodka?
Well, it was for months, if not probably a year or so. But Ricky, looking back, I was in denial.
So what I'm trying to get at is you're in the shop. Did the family start noticing that you're?
Oh yeah.
So what I'm trying to say, there was a little bit of run up towards your judge's daughter's wedding.
Yeah.
Right,
it didn't just happen then. It was probably a good year or so, probably 2 years.
Oh, where you're slowly revving it up every week, every week. Yeah.
Every year, yeah. It started off with the cans. The cans weren't enough. Went on to quarter bottles. The quarters weren't enough. Then it went on to the half a bottle, and kind of said that was okay, but was drinking cans as well with that. And then even that wasn't enough. I went on to a bottle. Even after that first seizure, my alcohol intake increased. Went up to a bottle, 70 cl. And eventually that wasn't enough, and then I went on to a litre.
And so, at that stage where you've gone into hospital, the doctors are telling you to calm, you need to stop, or you need to calm down, or severely reduce your intake. At that point, did you know that wasn't you were going to ignore what they were going to say, and would you class yourself then as a full addict?
Yeah, I was comprehending what they were saying, but I didn't want to accept it.
Right.
My wife would say to me, "You're an alcoholic," and I hated that. I absolutely hated that. She'd even say if I managed a week or so without it, she'd say, "Okay, accept that you're a recovering alcoholic." I wasn't having that either. I didn't want to be labelled an alcoholic, and I think partly that was because my dad was an alcoholic.
Right. Okay.
And
so you already were brought up in an environment where alcohol was already dominating family life, and you could see the problems that it was bringing.
Yeah. My dad was, his addiction to alcohol was quite bad. So I'd seen all that. And then I think for me, I didn't want to be like my dad. But, my grandma's still alive. And occasionally when I go and see her, she'll say, Jaswinder, you actually were worse than your dad. It's quite, to hear that, it's quite scary.
And then you've clearly then started having the increase at that time. How were you able to kind of balance out your private life in terms of drinking, you keeping your addiction going, and then, so to speak, keeping up appearances as well at the same time? Would you class yourself, were you functioning alcoholic in terms of going to work, or were you just, what was happening in terms of that balance?
I managed to keep it up while I was working in the shop for a while.
Yeah.
The family knew that my drinking was getting out, and my dad was alive then as well. And, they could see what it was doing. And eventually they'd had enough. I wasn't allowed to go in the shop. They stopped me from going in the shop. My brother and my wife were doing the shop. We had staff as well. So they were running the shop. Eventually, my brother and my wife didn't want to do that. They didn't want to run the shop. And my brother joined the police force, so he couldn't do it. My wife wasn't going to do those hours. And, my family decided to sell the shop. At this point, I was very angry and resentful towards them. Why they're selling the shop. It was a good income. There's plenty of booze for me, so. But yeah, at that point, that's when my drinking got kind of worse. I think if they never sold the shop and left it to me, I would have lost it anyway. Probably would have got nothing for it, right? Or I would have ended up killing myself. But for looking back, it was a blessing. I really do feel that selling the shop was the best thing that could have happened at that time. But then when I started working, after just getting jobs through agencies, etc., I couldn't hold a job down, because I was just drinking. I was either going there after I'd had a drink, or I wouldn't get up in the morning and go to work. My life just became so chaotic for a couple of years.
And was there any point of this journey at this stage where you were considering help, or somebody tried to push help onto you?
When I'd go into hospital after a seizure, maybe, or even for a detox, the alcohol services would come down, and it was just lip service. I'd listen to them and not do anything about it. I wouldn't even go to the local alcohol services. They'd suggest AA, but I never went. I mean, sometimes I'd literally walk out of the hospital and I'd be straight down to the off license. So I was, no, I wasn't going to go to any.
And how many times were you going into the hospital at this stage?
To be honest with you, Ricky, in 2008, I lost count how many times I went into hospital. I lost count how many seizures I had. If I'm truly honest with you. And I even remember one occasion when I was waiting for my sister in the waiting room when I ran across the road to the off license, bought half a bottle, and I had that while I was waiting for her in the waiting room.
And was that, on looking back, was that the most amount that you were drinking in your career, or did it go worse?
I think towards the end of 2008, probably September, October time, that's when it went up to a litre. I could leave the house at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to the newsagents, get a bottle of 70 cl. Come the evening, 5, 6 o'clock, I could go back out again. And if someone who didn't know me very well wouldn't even be able to tell that I had a 70 cl. So I'd go out again, get another 70 cl, and it'd probably take it up to easily a litre.
And what was vodka your?
Yeah, vodka, yeah.
Is that because of the choice of harder to smell off somebody, or?
Initially, it was because I thought it was harder to smell. I know someone who, when we had the shop, used to drink vodka, right? And they said, before that it was Bacardi. I was on Bacardi, and but then I went over to vodka. But then I think towards the end, I actually thought I enjoyed it. I thought I actually enjoyed it, but no. But I think I just got used to vodka.
So what were the next steps then from when you got to this point where you're hitting a litre bottle a day? You just said that you're quite enjoying it as well at some stage, at some aspect. Why the change then?
The change came when I think my mum and my brother came round. My wife had kicked me out enough times. I'd come back, she had no choice but to take me back, I suppose. Well, she did have a choice. But it's my mum and my brother that came round. And they said, we've had enough of your bullshit. Pack your bags. We don't care where you go. We're looking after your wife. We're looking after the kids. And that's when it kind of, and I knew they were serious. I never put up a fight against them because, I knew what was going to come. They just physically throw me out. And I think when it dawned on me when I was sleeping on park benches, spent nights on a park bench, going to knocking on my chacha's doors houses.
So you're out of the house. And
I'm out of the house, yeah.
You're out of the house on that first night. What do you do?
I just buy a bottle, walk around the streets, go to the park, and just sit there all night. And then I remember the following morning, I think I went to my chacha's. He let me in. He wanted to know what happened. Yeah.
And then did he kick you out as well?
No, he kept me for a while, but then I went back home. But then the same scenario again. I'd get kicked out again after a few days, and then the park bench again, and then goes to. I mean, the only people that tolerated me were my sisters. They were the only people that tolerated me, and I think my mum. It was killing my mum as well. But she had to practice that tough love.
Well, she already got used to it with your dad at some aspect.
Yeah.
And so you even at that point, then you realised that help wasn't kind of viable option. I'm just trying to kind of think of the passage in my head in terms of where you get to a point, even when at the park benches, you're sleeping there, you're doing all of this, and it's still not enough for you. What was that tipping point?
Even before it came to that, I got done for drink driving third time. That's where it kind of, things really got from bad to worse. That wasn't enough for me. The third time you get in court, I got banned. I had to take my test again. And then things just got kind of, and I was involved with the Gurdwara, in the Derby Gurdwara, the main one. I was involved with local politics. And I think for me, that's what really tipped me over the edge, the shame. what are people going to think? And I couldn't get out of that, the shame. What would people be thinking of me? But it was in 2009 when I woke up in my sister's house, and I just really had enough. You could say I'd had enough of, being fed up. And I just woke up and I thought, where's this drink taken me? I was living out of a carrier bag. We've got our own house, and living out of a carrier bag, and thinking, I played the tabla at the Gurdwaras with the Gyannis.
Were you still drunk at this point?
When I was playing the tabla?
Yeah. When you were like you're part of the management committee, and
yeah. This is how crazy it is, and the addiction is. I was on the committee when I got caught drink driving the third time. And then I think that was a lot, the shame, like I say, the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment, what people are going to say. And I think when I woke up with my sisters, and I just had enough. I'd resigned to the fact that I'm probably not going to see my kids again. My wife's had enough. She'd had the divorce papers at home. But I just wanted my life back, Ricky. I really did. I used to think back, I used to play the tabla with some good Kirtaniya, Gyannis, etc. Being up there with some of the, religious leaders, in the UK, hanging around with them. And then waking up in police cells, waking up in your sister's house, your chachi's house, your grandma's house, living out of a caravan. I thought, well, what am I doing? And that's when it kind of dawned on me, and that's when I wanted to change. That's when the penny dropped for me.
But did you understand why you were drinking?
Not at the time, no. It was my last drink was in January the 30th, 2009, and Friday, March the 13th was my first meeting. Friday, March the 3rd, first recovery meeting, 2009, and I'd say it wasn't until 4 years into my recovery that I realized why I was drinking. It took me, for some people say, it took you that long. Some might even take longer. But I realized that I wasn't comfortable with, who I was. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I was always chasing things, want to be something that I wasn't. And the drink was just a mask and a disguise. Even to the point where being on the Gurdwara committees, playing the tabla, hanging around the music scene, going to the gigs, etc., going backstage with the, artists and that. So always chasing things, always wanting to be someone. And that, and the drink was allowing me to do that.
And then at that stage where, you're part of it, you've been caught, you've gone into kind of recovery. So you've gone into kind of your meetings at that point. Why did AA and the fellowship sort of kind of resonate with you?
I didn't go to AA for a few months, to be honest. I went to a group in Nottingham called Backin, and that was for people from the BAME community, Black people, Asians, and for me, we used to have meetings in Derby on a Friday evening, and the first meeting I went to, I still remember it today. There were 7 people in that meeting, and it was almost like walking into a room with a rucksack full of bricks. That's how much I was feeling weighed down. When I walked into that meeting, I shared from the heart, and for the first time, for as long as I could remember, I cried. I'd been crying to manipulate everyone and anyone around me to prove that my drinking wasn't my fault, that it was my wife's fault, it was my mum's fault, my dad's fault, whoever's. But it was the first time, for as long as I can remember, I cried. And I think I felt a lot of comfort from being around people from my own community, right, that understood me. I just felt people, even at the Gurdwara, people used to come round, the Gyannis, the Singhs, the Amritaris, and they say, Jaz, if you can't stop drinking, have 2 shots at night, this dinner, don't bother anyone, just have your 2 shots. But when I shared and when I listened to these people, everything they were saying resonated with me. It was almost like whether they were drug addicts or alcoholics, it was almost a mirror image of me. And I remember sitting in that meeting and realizing afterwards that this is how sick the mind is. I thought my mum and my wife had actually told each and every one of them what to say. It was a conspiracy because it was just too much like me. And I think that's what made me break down. I think, wow, for me, for the first time in my life, I felt I felt I belonged somewhere.
Then, so how long did you stay with these kind of meetings before going over?
I think it was my sponsor who was put back in as well. And it was David that suggested that I go to AA. And David suggested that, you need to see recovery from AA as well. You just don't want to, because they back in worked the program, they did the 12 steps. So a lot of them went to the fellowships, AA, NA, CA. And, I was a bit reluctant because I'd been to a meeting in 2008 and it was a pretty bad AA meeting. It wasn't really AA, it was like something that they called themselves AA, but it wasn't. It was a bad meeting, basically. So I didn't really want to go, but David suggested that I go. I found another friend, a brother that went to these meetings back in, and we went to his home meeting was a Monday night, and I went to that meeting. It was amazing. There's people, professionals, there's people that just ordinary people working 40 hours in factories, and there's people that just come out of treatment.
So for some people who are listening to this, they may not have a sort of a concept of what an AA meeting looks like. Can you just tell us what that actually is, what it consists of, and what's the kind of formula of it?
AA is just a group of people that get together and share their experience, strength, and hopes. Someone chairs the meeting. There's no membership for you to go there. You can walk into any AA meeting anywhere in the country, or even you can access it over Zoom now. And there's a group of people, like-minded people that are going to be there that share their experience, strength, and hopes. And that's where you can share, and it's all private and confidential. You can share without feeling judged or being ostracized. And when you do that, for me, a big fear was that I'm going to be ostracized by my own community. But in AA, when you're not going to be judged, and that's one of the greatest things, that no one's going to judge you there. It doesn't matter what you share, because someone's going to have done what you have done.
And the anonymity is such an important part of this as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. And for a lot of people, when you would try and encourage them to come to the meeting, anonymity is one of the biggest fears. What if someone recognizes me? What if someone sees me walking through that door? But, for a lot of people, rightly so, it is a big anxiety. But honestly, the confidentiality and that anonymity is respected in the AA meetings, and I think in any fellowship.
So did you try any harm reduction approaches rather than?
No.
So abstinence was the way that it had to be for you?
Yeah.
I just want to kind of paint the picture, you see, because kind of like when you're in your addiction kind of height, I was kind of entering the addiction field myself at that point, and I started a conversation about identifying with the gaps and things. And as I was going through a lot of the talking to a lot of the hierarchy in terms of like the charity event and people who was just generally the people who are working within the addictions field, I just really struggled to relate to any of them, because I knew my community, the Punjabi Sikh community, had a real problem with alcohol. But when I was seeing the data in front of me, it just didn't exist. When I looked at the help and support where people were trying, those people who were going to the doctors and trying to get that help and support, it just didn't exist. You entering your AA at that time, were you seeing those brown faces, for example, that were missing in the data that I was looking in, but were turning up to there?
Very few. I'm not going to lie. Very few. I mean, the meeting I went to in Derby on a Monday night, I think there's probably about 3 of us, sometimes at the most, out of about 20 in that meeting. And you could go to some meetings in Derby and there was no brown faces.
So in your opinion, where do you think they were? I mean, I've got a theory into it, but I just want to know where do you think?
They're at home or drinking in the pubs. They weren't in recovery, were they? They weren't in the AA meetings.
No.
They weren't with the CGLs. So they basically they weren't accessing any help.
I started to notice and seeing people getting sent over to India. I saw those rehabs starting to explode in Punjab. And
I think what
like
you've got to understand is people were, look, you got the addict that was in denial, whether it's drugs or alcohol, right? And the family was in denial, right? So where were these people going to turn to? My mum was in denial. My mum, she'd get asked just if I wasn't at a wedding or they're constantly covering you up, without, I don't blame them, that's how they learned to deal with it. They didn't know any better.
It was a stigma and kind of their own self-medication, really.
Yeah, I mean, and you know very well yourself that, no mother wants her son or daughter to be labeled Amali, Nakamma, Sharabi. You know what I mean? These are the labels in our community, the Punjabi words that we give. Yeah. Let alone the English ones that we give.
Because I started to see a lot of the services then were starting to put on this kind of like the BAME set of service, and I don't really blame them really, because they're trying to engage with like as many different cultures, communities as possible. They put these on, and it's like a tick box for them in one aspect. Say, look, we're trying it. Look, we've done it. We've just commissioned this piece of, this campaign to try and get them in there, but knowing full well that you're missing out on the people. Like, I was funny because I was having this conversation with, I think a couple of weeks ago with DJ Reminisce, based in Canada. And I would say, like, now we're seeing the first generation of cocaine users in South Asian communities, especially like the Punjabi community, who've been doing it since the year 2000. That's when it kind of like where it kind of started. We've never had this data before in terms of like we're starting to see people kind of having serious problems now because of their kind of drug use. Some entering into treatment. Ironically, I'm 39 now, and the average age of people coming into treatment for drug use is about 39, into 30s, 37 to like 40 odd. And for alcohol, it's a little bit more. So I know there's this influx of people who my age who are going to start entering treatment. In some ways, it's almost a better time for them to engage into treatment because of the likes of work that, like you've done in trying to make that easier. What was some of the challenges that you found straight away that you needed to try and address?
It's a good question, Ice.
Thank you.
Hard question as well.
No, I'm not saying there's a right answer with this.
No, I know.
I'm just trying to say.
No, I think the challenges for me, when I decided I'd had enough, I was quite fortunate that backing was around, and they still are, right? So for me, when I wanted to access, I didn't go into rehab or treatment as such, but when I wanted to go for, I was lucky that I went to a group where it was culturally empathic for me. But I think a lot of people that didn't have the benefit of backing. The challenges for them would have been, where do they go for this? Where is the awareness? Where is the education that actually these places exist? Where is the education, or where is the awareness that the Sikh Recovery Network exists? It's only because we make the noises or we go out there doing the work that, we're getting recognized. What are the mainstream services doing to promote this? What are the commissioners doing to promote this? It's everything that we've done, the Sikh Recovery Network's done, is we've had to promote it ourselves. People like yourselves or on the Sikh channel, that we've had to go out there and make those noises. We've set up the meetings ourselves where other people or other communities have gone out to get funding for them. We do knock the Gurdwara, but these Gurdwara in Derby, Southall, Leicester, Coventry, they have facilitated these meetings because they recognise there is a need for it today.
Yeah, I could see that. I also see in terms of where we potentially in the community had charlatans of coming in and kind of exploiting some of those vulnerable people, saying, give us X amount of money and we'll sort this person out. We'll get rid of their addiction. We'll get it all sorted, knowing full well. Did you ever have to face that yourself?
Yeah, I've just had it recently. People wondering why we're doing this for nothing. People ask, "What do you charge?" We charge nothing. You know, but some families, they're struggling or don't have it in me to ask them to even pay for my expenses. We don't ask for it, but yet I've been to families' houses where they say, "Who do you work with?" You know, and I say, "I'll come down with someone," and they want to know the name because they've been ripped off by people in our own community, saying, "Oh, so and so, they asked for money. Don't come with that person." So there are people that have been asking for money, you know, home detoxes, and some of these people have got they haven't even got the lived experience, and their way of dealing with it isn't, you know, is take them to the Gurdwara, part kariyo, part kariyo. You know, these guys, they're not even clinically, the alcohol isn't even out of their system yet, and you're telling them to do the part.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? You want to take them down to the Gurdwara when they can't even think straight. And
Yeah,
yes, there are people in our community, Ricky. We have to be honest here. Right? There's people in our community that are exploiting our own people, and they're shafting them, and they're not giving them anything. What we're saying, the Sikh Recovery Network, is if you need treatment, we know of reputable treatment centers that you can go to, right? But for me, I did it. I struggled for 4 weeks. I did it cold turkey, right? If you really want to do it, you can do it in the community.
Mm. I remember somebody coming up to very early on it was probably around about 2011, 2012. I think they've just been ripped off for about 25 grand. The family owned like numerous chip shops and stuff. And I got this call about 2 o'clock in the morning. I think that I was a lot more kind of passionate in that way of trying to help and stuff. And to be honest, I've said it before, it burnt me out because it was at the cost of me, basically. And as I'm having this conversation with them, they were like, "Oh, you know, what's your kind of your answer to this?" And I said, "Look, I haven't got an answer right now because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Just give me until the morning and I can sort something out." And they go, "Well, you need to let us know before then." I said, "Why?" They go, "Oh, because we've booked him on a flight to India." And I said, "Look, I'll try my best, but like I don't know what deadlines that you're going to how to work." Anyway, long story short, the person goes to India. They come back, and I got a phone call again. They said, "Look, could you come to the house?" So I was like, "Okay, I'll come to the house." I came to the house, and at that point, I was speaking to him, and all of a sudden, I realized that something ain't right here. It was like he'd started drinking again quite excessively, but they couldn't understand because he'd stopped drinking for like 5 weeks while he's been in India at this point. I then asked him, I said, like, "So, you know, when you went to India, what did treatment look like for you there?" He goes, "Basically, I got off the plane, went home in the middle of the night. Some people came to the door, knocked on the door, they grabbed him, put him in a van, took him to some center, and at the center there was huts where they had all the muds, all the cows, and they literally had just tied him up to a munja for like 5 weeks, cold turkeyed, come back, and then presented him to the family, say, 'Look, he's not drinking. Obviously he hasn't been drinking because he's been tied, he's been bloody kidnapped.' And then as soon as they came over, obviously the first thing they see, 'Oh, look, he stopped drinking, look how healthy he is,' and all this. But they about a day later, he'd gone down to the pub, gone to the off license, started drinking again. So there was just absolute no social cycle interventions. And you're like, what are you expected to do? So they didn't even tell the family of what they were doing. He was too embarrassed to tell him what had actually happened to him. Only opened up to me because I had an inkling what was going on, because you know you hear these horror stories all the time. And because I think in kind of summary, I think Apne, in terms of the community, don't feel like somebody can achieve anything without they feel like that they're throwing money at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If they're throwing money at it and it works, well, I can explain that. But if something's working out for free, they think there's a catch. And I think that's where, like, I think that has been one of the challenges of trying to explain about addiction, is that your addiction doesn't give a shit about money. It doesn't care. There are other things that are much more important.
I think, it's interesting that, Ricky, what you just said, and one of the reasons the family, they're desperate, right? So they'll go to any, they're desperate, Hannah. But that doesn't work. I mean, this person you're talking about, I've heard a lot of horror stories, right? And one of the reasons they come back and they drink, they're resentful. They're full of resentment, for the family as well, for putting them through that. The people that have done it, and if they're religious people, they're not going to go back to that kind of, to the Gurdwara or wherever. So people don't realize they actually do more damage than good. And these people that go to these places just come back just angry, resentful, and the first thing they want to do is get off their head.
Out of spite as well, isn't it? It's just like,
just out of spite, out of anger. I had it when I used to get, and I'd be taken away. My mum and dad used to come and take me back to their house, give my wife a bit of a break, and they'd keep me there for a few days, and I'd just be like a prisoner for, I wouldn't be allowed out of the house on my own. And when I did get out on my own, the first thing I wanted to do was have a drink. So I totally understand, why the families do it. It's desperation, but money isn't the solution. I mean, one year, it was a few years ago, I had a lady phone me around Christmas time. She got my number off my wife at the Gurdwara, and she phoned me and she says, my son's he's on drugs and alcohol. His one marriage has failed. His second marriage is about to fail. Can you tell me what help can you give him, and how did you stop? I tried to explain how I did it. And it took me 3 times to explain. And eventually, I said, we do it through the meetings. And she goes, no, but ਕਹਿੰਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਜੇ ਹਨਾ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਦਵਾਂ ਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ 100 ਪਾਉਂਡ ਭੇਜ ਦਿਓ ਡਾਕ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਹਨਾ and ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਪੁੜੀਏ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ ਗੋਲੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਦੇ ਦਵਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਫੇਰ ਯਕੀਨ ਆ ਜਾਣਾ. Then she started laughing, and that's what the people want.
We're too medicalized, man.
It is medicalized, but for me, you hear it in the fellowships as well. The solution is in the rooms. The solution, if you really want to get better, go into those meetings. You don't have to pay. And when you get discharged from treatment, Ricky, you know this. What do they give you for aftercare? What do the treatment centers? Your bloody priories, all these expensive ones. Right? What do they say to you when you get discharged? And right, here's your aftercare. Go on.
They give you a handshake and a smile.
Yeah, well, they give you that. Yeah, but they say, go and find yourself a sponsor. Go to your AA meetings. Go to your, you do that for free anyway. You don't need to pay 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 grand, 18 grand to know that. The solution, I believe the solution is in the rooms. If you really want recovery, if you want it and you want to change, you don't need to pay 10 grand. I was on my hands and knees. I was in the gutter. I was desperate for it. And in the early days, if my sponsor said something, I'd go to any lengths to do that. He said, go and find yourself an AA meeting. I did that. If he said, phone me every morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, I did that.
So you kind of going back to your story a bit, then you've set this up. Why did you feel the need then to set up Sikh Recovery?
Steve, because there was nothing there for our Sikhs. You just said it yourself. Where were the Punjabis? Where were the Sikhs? They weren't in the rooms. They needed not just me, but there's others as well. They needed someone like to us to talk, so that shame was lifted. If someone who played the tabla in the Gurdwara, who was on the committee, got caught drink driving, it can stand up in his own community, in his own Gurdwara, and say, yes, I did that shit. I'm not proud of it. I'm ashamed of it when I think about it. But, it happens. We've had phone calls now from Amritaris on committees who are drinking, who are on pills, right? But they're doing it, hiding it. They're hiding under their, their banner, if you like. But, for me, the best thing that I could do was admit it for myself and for others.
Yeah. yeah, I mean, like, I've got to be careful.
Say it, man. Say how it is.
No,
Go
no,
on. Dharma.
no. I think what it was is like, in fairness, like I know at the time, you know, I personally had tried, and other people had tried to try and do their. I had like Seek Recover. I had a Seek to Recover, and I was the kind of philosophy around it was to get, you know, was trying to bridge that gap from Punjabi culture to the religion in terms of that religious institution. So, for example, you'd have somebody who'd been outcasted by like the Gurdwara. So they'll go like yourself, for example, you'd be needing help or treatment. You go to a Gurdwara to try and help. The Gurdwara would say, well, you know, and I had it said to me like, oh, Sikhs don't drink. They got, you know, a proper Sikh doesn't drink, and they wouldn't engage. They'll get somebody in to try and put up a banner, like a little poster of trying to get people into treatment. They realize at this point that the person who they're trying to get into it doesn't go to the Gurdwara because they're not allowed in. Somebody's they kick them out. They're outside being ostracized. And I always felt that there was this bridge to try and bring in. So talking therapies, getting the community used to talking therapies, because if you got the right ingredients on everything, regardless of what the subject matter is, whether it's sexual abuse or domestic violence, because that's those are the hidden harms, isn't it? So from alcohol, for example, the strong relationship with sexual abuse and physical abuse, that doesn't necessarily get come out on the forefront on a conversation. And I always found that when I was trying to put this up, I just couldn't get the buy-in. So I took it to a point, and then I always thought like somebody else better than me will just come pick this up, move it forward. And that's why, you know, when you came in and you were doing the AA models and all this, I was like, this is the guy, this is the person to kind of going through. So I think, you know, like just trying to, and the other danger, which I will say, was that there was some organizations, and there's some of them still around now, where they was how long it took to sit on those tables and get the respect of those commissioners, those charities to try and help out, almost kind of bulldoze their way to sit on the table, and really did some damage. They really did some damage. And I kind of learned the lesson then, where I think that was the kind of straw that broke the camel's back, where I thought, I'm constantly kind of swimming uphill here. Instead of trying to tackle this kind of like on a lone ranger kind of way, I need to just support several people and try and help them achieve what they did. But I feel like what you've done, you know, and how you've pushed it forward has been excellent. And so I'm always keen in terms of like how to support the Sikh Recovery Network, but also not just that, what's it going to take to push you onto the next level? So what is those next steps for them, for you, Jaz?
Another good question, Ricky. I think the next steps really is, you know, I've been blessed as well to, you know, on this journey, met some great people, you know, done some amazing stuff. And I think I don't know what the next step is. I don't know. We'll just carry on and see where it takes us. Yeah, I have got some short-term goals, long-term goals. We'll just see, you know, and like I said, you know, we're not in it. Those organizations you're on about, we know who they are. They've been exposed, right? But that, you know, I believe they only damaged themselves. They haven't damaged the work that we're doing, the work that you started, right? We just picked up from where you left off. And, you know, I didn't even know about you then, but the support we've had from you has been unconditional. And, you know, I've learned a lot working with you and doing these kind of podcasts, interviews. And so we're learning all the time, you know, and I'm not afraid to sit down with any service provider. We get criticized for working with certain ones saying they're using you. But, you know, if they hadn't used us, there's a lot of people that won't be in recovery now, right? But it's a two-way thing. I don't believe they're using us for a start. You know, we're using their resources, they're using our resources, and we're helping people to get into recovery. Now, we can't do this on our own. The Sikh Recovery Network can't do it on our own. These organizations that sat around these tables, they didn't sit there because they could do it on their own. They were doing that because there was a big pot of funding there. And we know where that funding was going to go, right? but at least we're working with the mainstream organizations now, right? And the Punjabi or the Sikh community are getting that support that they need. You talk about, now, in some of the outbuildings that the Gurdwara provide, there's people that have come in there intoxicated, but they can sit in those outbuildings. They've come to the Gurdwara, they can sit there and they can talk. And you know what? Some of those people have remained in recovery. They've had bliss, but they've come back and they're in recovery. But I think there's a lot of work. There is a lot of work to do. I don't know where we're going to go. I'm just going to carry on with doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. I just got, maybe it's kind of like when you're a kid and you could think, cars are going to start flying soon, I always thought when I entered the addiction field, when I was kind of in it or towards the end of it, that when you don't necessarily go to like a Sikh hospital if you break your leg, you just go there because it's universal, isn't it?
Oh.
And one aspect was to say, is it universal in terms of like addictions that you wouldn't need to cater for different communities? The more that I've kind of saw it kind of grown up, the more the need is. And I just thought the amount of operative doctors that I know, pharmacists, all these skilled professionals, all this money, all these charities that are going somewhere down there, someone better than me, someone better than a project manager, or someone to put together and say, right, we've got the ambition here to put up a center or whatever it may be for different aspects. But just taking that idea from paper into kind of reality, and all the charities can put their names to it and say, yeah, we've done this and that. I think people are just so caught up in their own kind of momentum or their own identity. They just don't focus on one area. It's just, I want to do a little bit of this, I want to do a little bit of that. And it's normally driven by one individual or two individual or three individual. But I think to have a whole organization like working towards it and have a legacy, I think that's where it might happen.
We can totally go, it will happen. It will happen. I genuinely believe it will happen. But unfortunately, like you just said, this isn't glamorous. You've seen the amount of people that go out there doing the langar. The langar is a bit more glamorous, huh? To feed someone and put it on social media. Oh, we've done this many feeds, we've done that many feeds, etc. Right? And then with our people in our community, there's too many. They say, everyone wants to be the leader. Then you've got the ones who are the jack of all trades. They'll say, we do this, we do that, we do everything, but they can't do anything, right? It just saddens me really that the community like ours that blessed in so many ways with so many professionals, so affluent, that yet we can't do this because there's too many people that want to be the main guys. But I genuinely believe in my heart that it will happen. Maybe it's not us that are going to do it. Your work was carried on by someone else. And maybe our work will be carried on, taken to the next level by someone else. And maybe we can all put our name to it.
Yeah, I'm not having that kind of defeatist attitude. I just thought I had to kind of, sometimes you do a piece of work and you've got to kind of make your peace with it to turn around and say, like, okay, it's done as much as you can. Let it go. What would it look like? What would the ultimate kind of thing look like? How would it kind of, what that image is? But I also think that we've concentrated quite heavily on alcohol, but we know, like, at the same time that there's the drug side of it, especially in the other field, the music field that I've got an interest in, is like how that's facilitating and the damage that's being done as well. Do you kind of see your area in terms of like expanding more? I know you do drug and alcohol. Do you feel that attention is being neglected, and are you working to do that?
Absolutely, I reckon you're 100% there. I do feel it's been neglected. The focus has been on alcohol, when and I know the use of cocaine has just kind of exploded over the last few years, and I think it's only coming to light now because some of the deaths that have been happening, heart attacks at young ages. And I think people are covering that up as well. So yes, I think it's something that we're going to have to look at. We're professionals, we can't do everything. And I think more needs to be done in our community to raise awareness about that.
Yeah, my mate owned. I've said this before, like many years ago, but like it's still the case now. My mate owns like a wedding hall, and he finds more cocaine residue in the women's toilets than he does in the men's. And so like that kind of awareness of what's going on is that like there's a lot of things that people just don't simply just know about. But there's many different reasons: weight loss, images. You see people having Botox. It's all these kind of addictions, the appearance to look good as best they can, taking substances, taking a weight loss pills. All of this thing is just like you could just see it simmering and boiling away everywhere.
Quick fixes, isn't it? Everyone wants a quick fix. And I think that
but we do live in that instant gratification.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to watch something, you go straight on your phone. It's just there. You don't have to wait for anything.
Yeah. But it's the same with recovery. People, you know, who I was drinking 15, 20 years, and, you know, and I wanted it straight away, but you have to put the effort in it. You know, it doesn't come overnight. You're going to have to work hard at it. And it's, you know, with weight loss, you know, look at you. You don't have to do any Botox. What's your secret?
Oh, this is just pure fat, mate. So like if you've got like if you're with me, if I'm fat, then it stretches the skin, so it makes it look good. It's only when I lose weight that's when they'll say, Rick, you've aged. But these bags are like, I can't do anything about them. Might have to ring Ravita Panu and say, yo, I had her on, so she owes me some favors now. Just coming to this bit, and the timing of this is so when people will see this out, we'll be in the middle of Alcohol Awareness Week. What are some of the things that you've had, like you got planned for Alcohol Awareness Week, or what does it kind of mean for you?
Alcohol Awareness Week is, for me, for the Sikh Recovery Network, is get the message out there that recovery is possible, that help is available. Reach out. You know, don't be fearful. Don't be ashamed. You know, what we're doing over Recovery Week, we're doing some posts online on the social media. We're doing our own podcast. We do our own podcast under the influence. We've got some podcasts going out all week, and doing some interviews, working with Turning Point, doing stuff with them, just trying to raise the awareness. You know, let people know that there is help available. Yeah. You know, let's use this week just to get the message out there. Yeah.
So Jaz, this is called the, you know, we've spoken many times, and you will be always have the door open to you on here. This is called the bandwagon, so I give every guest an opportunity for them to kind of either jump on a bandwagon or get off a bandwagon, or just generally raise something that they feel like they want to share or get off their chest. Is there anything that you want to do?
No, sounds cool, man. No, I just want people just to spread the love, man. Just spread the love. Right? There's a lot of love. There's a lot of love here, Ricky. Don't be shy, man.
That's a different
podcast. Spread the love.
Right? Yeah. No, I get what you mean, Jaz. It's definitely kind of a time to kind of unite and work together, especially to try and. No one's going to beat this on their own. It's just going to be one of those ever-ending battles. But we've got to have enough people. We ain't got enough soldiers at this point.
No, we want good people as well. Genuine people, sincere people. You know, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass here, mate. You know, but you've been doing this a lot longer than us, and you know, there's a lot of sincerity with yourself, and that's why we can work with you. There's people who try to use us and abuse us. You know, I ain't got time for those people. And I'm on about people in my community, the ones with the long beards, and that claim to be, you know, the Bant Sabde Sir de Kharaya, right? I ain't got no time for them. I don't care what they think of me, right? I want to work with people with sincerity, with empathy, with love, compassion, and warmth, you know, and that's what's going to, you know, help our community, is that love and that warmth, you know, and that's what we need.
Jaz, thank you for jumping on today. I really appreciate it. And I'll put all the links to the Sikh Recovery Network on the description on the podcast, wherever you see it on YouTube as well. And I wish you all the best. And as I said, anything you need, all you need to do, just call, mate.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Ricky.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.